Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP. I'm going to be having a journal club again about an autism study. And this study is about the 4 different groupings of autism. You've probably heard of autistic content creators talking about this. And I don't know where I am on the subject. I don't know where I place myself. I just know that I am not 100% positive to it, but after reading about it, I've gotten more positive the more I've read about it. So I'm going to not be talking about my stance now. I'm going to talk about it later. First, I'll just present the study and then say what they came to, and then like the results, and then we can have a discussion. Also, a disclaimer that I am not a scientist myself. I am a medical resident in general practice, and I have learned how to read studies within my studies, right, medical school. And I've had to do a research project for my medical research, but I haven't done any research on my own. I haven't done a PhD within anything, and I haven't published any papers. So I don't know really what I'm talking about, but I try my best. I'm going to be going through Littman et al. From the 9th of July 2025. It's from Princeton University, and I actually read mostly the article that Princeton University published as a explanation of the study. I also read the abstract of the study, but I did not understand bits of it. I did not read the entire study. Anyway, it's a study of a cohort of 5,000 children within the Spark cohort. And the Spark cohort is actually autistic-led group. It's a cohort created by and for autistic people. So that's a positive, it's not like from Autism Speaks, I guess, a group that does not care about autistic voices. So that is very positive. And in those 5,000 children, they looked at several questionnaires that the parents filled out, I think, and maybe other adults in these children's lives, but the children did not fill out questionnaires. And that is kind of a problem, is that it's about the behaviors of children, which cannot come from the child's experience in itself. But anyway, through that data, they came up with 230 traits for that they said that either the child had or did not have. And it could be anything from social interaction difficulties to repetitive behaviors. And they were core traits, and then there were associated traits. So core traits are basically like the DSM traits, and then there were associated traits. And then there were co-occurring conditions. And so they looked at that. They also looked at how late these children were with their developmental milestones. And they also have this cohort with matched genetics. So they did, I don't know how much, if they did whole genome sequencing, or if they just looked at certain genes. But it seems like they looked at patterns of genes, and they looked at which mutations of the genes were inherited from the parents and which were de novo mutations, which are basically mutations that are only present in the child and not in the parents. So they could kind of figure out the pathways of inheritance of these things, and also they can make hypotheses about the mechanics of the genetic inheritance thing, and also the mechanics of from gene to trait behavior, but we're not there yet. That's just research for the future, Now, point is to integrate biology in the clinically relevant traits, I guess. Now, I would not say that it is super clinically relevant at the moment, but maybe it will be clinically relevant in the future. Like once we get into what they call like precision medicine, or like medicine that is tailored to each person. That's kind of where medicine in general is trying to move towards. Instead of saying like this diagnosis, everybody gets the same medicine, and everybody, like the people who don't respond to this medicine like have no other options. Now that we start getting more and more options in medicine, we want to like kind of figure out which people would be helped from which medicine. So making medicine more precision means that you will put people into smaller and smaller categories of like, okay, so you have pancreatic cancer, and your specific kind of pancreatic cancer, because we've done analysis, will respond well to this treatment. So we will give you this treatment rather than give you this other one, which probably won't work for your type of cancer. So even within diagnosis like cancer, you would be getting this specific treatment. So we're already there kind of in cancer treatments. In terms of like diabetes, we've gotten better. We're not as close as like the cancer treatments are usually like top end stuff, where they're like looking at, there's a lot of money in cancer medication. In diabetes medication, there is some money to be made, but because it needs to be available to more people, I don't know. I think it's kind of lagging, but we have gotten Ozempic from the diabetes medication industry. But so now we can say like, okay, your type of diabetes is would be helped with this kind of medication rather than this one. However, we're not at the moment yet in terms of diabetes medicine of like saying, oh, your diabetes is caused by this receptor, and so this gene, like we will match your genomics with what treatment you should use. We're not there yet. And so that's kind of where we want to go with the autism, or that's kind of how they wanted, how a lot of people want to go about autism research, is by using the genetics in order to get more precise treatment options. Now, you probably, my stance on treatment is very much against treatment for autism. However, I am for support, and I am for personalized support, and for accommodations. But I don't think that we're going to be getting best support through genetics. Okay, we'll leave that to the side for now. I think that it's important for me to now go into like what the results were, because okay, so I'm going too fast in the direction of like what are the conclusions. What was the results? The results were that this AI, this model, which is called generative mixed modeling, like kind of artificial intelligence and these modeling algorithms are really good at sensing patterns. Now, can they interpret the patterns? Maybe, but the best they are is at sorting things. So they can sort vast amounts of information, like all these genes from these 5,000 children, all these 230 traits on all of these children. That makes a lot of, it's bigger data than you can fit into an Excel sheet. So they it sorted out, different, and it started sorting, as the way that it does automatically, like AI does. Don't ask me about AI and how it works, because I'm not an engineer. Okay, I'm not an IT person, but it sorted these people out into 4 groups, and these children, right, into 4 groups, and the groups are named kind of weird things. Let's just say, I wonder if the AI named them themselves, or if the scientists came up with these names. But anyway, they came up with these names, and it's sorted, and they figured out that these sortings, there was a correlation, or there was you could see that the different traits matched with certain genetics. Like certain mutations were more likely to end up in a certain group, and so that's how they did the sorting. Now, there are 4 different groups. I'm reading here to the side, but the first one is called social/behavioral challenges, and it was 37% of the children were in there. And they had the core behaviors of autism, like repetitive behaviors, but they reach milestones same as neurotypical children, and they often had comorbid conditions such as ADHD, anxiety, and OCD. Now, I don't know where they got the diagnoses, but I think that they got it just from the questionnaires, so it's not like an official diagnosis. Then we've got mixed autism with developmental delay. It was 19% of the cohort. And they were kind of the opposite of the social behavioral challenges group. They had later milestones, but they had no anxiety, no comorbidity, like less comorbidities, so no anxiety, depression, or disruptive behaviors, right? And what they found there was that the people in the mixed group here had more rare inherited genetic variants. So they were more likely to inherit genes that were associated with autism. So that was interesting. Another thing is that they have a group called moderate challenges, which I would say is mostly your level 1 autistic, I guess. But that was 34% of these children, and they had core behaviors, but less strongly than maybe the other groups. So they had less severity of symptoms, you could say. They reach milestones on time and no co-occurring conditions. So basically the moderate challenges is basically the level 1, I would say. So we're less likely to have co-occurring conditions. And then we've got the opposite of them, I guess, which would be the broadly affected, which is 10%, which have what they call extreme and wide-ranging challenges and developmental delays, social and communication difficulties, and comorbidities. And in the broadly affected group, it had the highest de novo mutations. So mutations that were not found in the parents. So these children did not inherit a lot of genetics that were linked with autism from the parents. They did, but they also had the highest of their own mutations. And so they see that there are different mechanisms of genetic transmission behind what are superficially similar clinical presentations, because they could see, for example, that the mixed group that had developmental delay, right, they would be very similar presentation to the broadly affected group. However, the broadly affected group has most of the de novo mutations, and the mixed ASD group had most of the inherited genetic variants. So that means that there are different ways of getting autism genetically. So that's what they came up with. And they say, well, so these are the 4 classes that the AI found. Or I don't know if you could call it an AI, the model found. But they suspect that there are more than 4 classes. So there are at least 4. Now, they are very happy about this because it can lead to targeted developmental monitoring. So basically, like, okay, if the parents have autism, then you can check the children, and maybe find autism earlier in life. And also tailor support and accommodations and how to plan for the future. Because but if you knew the genetics and you knew that you were in a group that you might develop, have a developmental delay and present autistic symptoms later on, then I guess that you could be ready for that and you could diagnose autism. I don't really know. I don't really know what they want to do with that information. So that we don't miss autism, maybe. I don't know. But I find like I don't think that we need to go through genetic testing. And also, like, at the moment, we don't really think that autism develops later in life, past a certain age, I think that we have autism pretty early on in life, and then it just only gets diagnosed later on. But I don't see that this is very clinically relevant to most autistic children and autistic adults. But I don't know, maybe way into the future this might be useful. Then we've got also the fact that so because now this study would show, I guess, that it's complex and it's a heterogeneous group. So even the superficially what looks the same has different mechanisms of transmission of genomes. So basically, like, you could have the same clinical presentation, but different genetics, meaning that it's not just one gene that leads to the autism. There are many different genes and many different mechanisms for transmission, or just like how the autism is created. I don't know. So it's just different mechanics. I have a hard time with this because to me, so precision medicine is about grouping people. However, how many groups do we need? Is this truly helping the autistic community? Because we've done a big job now of like finding out that Asperger's and autism and Canner's, or whatever that was called, are part of the same spectrum. We've done this whole job of trying to unify the autistic community onto the spectrum, and now we're going to split the spectrum into different groups. And sure, every autistic person is different, and you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. But I don't believe that having a treatment that is, or treatment, an accommodation, a support that is tailored to you needs to mean that you are being classified into 4 different groups or more of different groups. I find that we're reverting back a little bit to the, classifying high functioning, low functioning um, and, you know, Asperger's, um, profound autism, whatever, we're reverting back to separating autism into different groups, when really, in order to do good activism and also to, you know, kind of be treated seriously by the medical community and just society at large, I think that we need to be a big, strong group of people. So I don't find that separating out different types of autism is the way to go at the moment. Maybe it will be important in the future, but at the moment I don't think that that's the way to go. And sure, people with low support needs and people with high support needs, you know, will need different supports, right? But I don't find that we need to go through the genetic component in order to take care of people the way that they need to be taken care of. So I have an issue with putting people into these AI generated classes based on patterns of behavior, mind you, in children who are diagnosed, and also in, you know, separated according to their genetics and not according to what supports they actually have use for, you know. I do find it problematic that it is children once again, because how can you say that they have, first of all, how can you say that they have OCD or depression or anxiety? Okay, it's kind of different in children as in adults. Also, how can you say that they have, if they have developmental delays? Like, you can have developmental delays as a child, but then not be affected by that as an adult. And also, that doesn't account for the difficulties that adults would be facing. And also, it doesn't help about getting an autism diagnosis as an adult. It doesn't really help you for this. Maybe it will in the future, but it's like way into the future. So I don't find that this has a lot of value now. Maybe this study will have great value, you know, way into the future. But at the moment, I don't see much, you know. It's interesting that there are different theories for the transmission, you know, about the genetics of autism. But I'm worried that it will be used in the wrong way, that basically autistic people will be sorted into categories, and that it will kind of be reverted back into like, okay, you have developmental disabilities, you don't, you know, infantilizing those with high support needs and dismissing those with low support needs, you know, kind of how it is today. And just leading us towards just less support overall than actually we need more practical help. Like, we need, at the moment, we're not even taken seriously, you know? And it's, at the moment, autism is just seen as a problem to get rid of. And I'm worried that knowing about the genetics, that they're going to try to figure out how to get rid of autistic children entirely. If we know about the genetics, you know. And I find that precision medicine maybe isn't really the thing that we need when it comes to conditions that don't have any medication for, you know. I think that precision medicine can be very useful for medication, because you know you want to avoid the side effects of medication and stuff. I have a hard time seeing what precision medicine in terms of non-medication means, um, because I've only heard about it in the context of like different medications. But I might be wrong. It might be something that's really um, concerning all kinds of treatments. But once again, are we really looking for treatments? Uh, I don't want us to be looking for treatments. I'm wanting us to look for supports and accommodations. And I'm not interested in curing autism in itself. So yeah, I kind of have mixed feelings about the study because I know that it is interesting, the patterns that have shown up and the fact that we can now somehow link um, traits uh, to genetics. Um, I find that it's just a very small step, and this small step is not even in any direction, you know? So I can't say much more than what I've just done. So tell me what you guys think. I know that a lot of autistic content creators have been very positive about the study. I want to be cautious because I once again I will make a video in the future about I think um, the broader autistic phenotype, the broader extended traits theory, which I don't really agree with either. Um, but once again, that can be useful in future studies. But it's hard to make these videos because I have to. It feels like I have to weigh every single word to not be taken out of context. And whatever I say, I will be taken out of context, and I will seem, you know, I am not very knowledgeable about these things. So obviously, I seem incompetent and not. Why am I talking about these things that I don't understand? You know, but I think that if I don't make a video about it, about my opinions, then nobody else will. You know. And I haven't seen this particular take on the internet, so maybe I'm alone in this, or maybe there are other people who just haven't had the courage to speak about the way that they see it. I don't know. So tell me what you guys think. Have a great day. Bye.